Welcome to Teaching Artistry with Courtney J. Body. That's me. This is a podcast that celebrates artists and advocates for community engagement. And like you, I'm home and looking to connect as best I can. And so we've launched this video cast called hashtag Keep Making Art with Creative Generation as our partner. And in this collaboration, we are talking to creatives who are making and sharing their art, or they're guiding others to make and share art. And if you haven't already, please subscribe to the YouTube channel. Also follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at Teaching Artistry. So let's get straight to our guest, George Rodriguez. Hi, George.
Hey, Courtney. Thanks for
How
having
are,
me.
oh, I'm so happy to have you. Thanks for joining me. Happy Easter.
Happy Easter.
So you are a friend of a friend, and I've been getting to know you through really just through her experience of sharing, and now you and I are friends on Facebook. So I have been able to see some of your work and get to know you through the Marco Polo that we have. So hey, how have you been dealing? You and your family been dealing with this moment of staying home?
Yeah, my partner and I, we're living in Philly right now, and my family is all concentrated in El Paso, Texas.
Mm.
So we don't video, Zoom, or chat too much, but I get to talk to them, and they're all healthy. They're all self-isolating, following guidelines and staying safe. So we're all just doing the best we can. I also have a lot of friends, really like close friends in Seattle, which is where I lived before moving to Philly. So it seems like, they've all had somebody that's been affected by what's going on, but they themselves are healthy and trying to follow guidelines. So.
That's great. And how do you identify as an artist?
Yeah, so I would say that I'm a visual artist. So I primarily a sculptor, I would say, in clay and ceramics. I do a little bit of printmaking, a little bit of painting, all in the visual arts world, but sculpture. My partner is in theater, and I didn't know that world until she introduced me to it. So I'm getting a more rounded arts experience, but I live in the visual arts world.
Gotcha. And I'm also in the performing arts world. I know Marisol very well. So for me, visual arts is something that I've always enjoyed, but don't have a lot of experience or making, of course, but just in general in terms of like history. However, when you were talking and saying that sculpture was your like main medium, I flashed to being in Paris back in November. And I went to the Rodin Museum for the first time, and I was just floored by seeing all these pieces of work live and in person that I only saw, on images or on television or different other kinds of media. But to see it live, to see the thinker live was insane. So I'd love to learn more about your process and how you develop works.
Yeah, I think just like talking, like hearing you say that story, I had the same experience when I can encounter visual artwork in person. There's something about growing up with these images that are kind of ingrained in our mind because they're just like used a lot in popular culture, and they're in books. They've been regarded, and to see them in person. There's a Rodin museum in Philly, which I haven't been to yet, but I'm excited to go. I'm a figurative sculptor primarily, so Rodin's a big influence. And yeah, for me, it's strange because I work primarily in clay and ceramics, which is a craft medium. And even within the art, motorcycle passing by. Even within the just like the art world, craft and fine arts, kind of, there's still not a controversy, but just like some discussions around that. But the beautiful thing that I love about clay and ceramics is that when I first started, I would look at all these books, and these artists that I admired would just like show up constantly. but because ceramics is such a tight-knit community, I got to meet these people because they're very accessible. They're very eager to share what they do. I'm not sure what question you asked. I kind of felt like I went on a tangent, but
I don't think I had a question. I was just saying that the closest I understand is by seeing something that I experienced a couple months ago. That's all.
yeah.
So how are you? So two things. One, I really enjoy Philly. It's so close to New York. It's only like 90 minutes away. I have plenty of friends who live there, and I don't know a ton about the the life there, but I love the restaurants. I love that it's such a nice walking city. It's
Mhm.
easy to navigate. So I'm just curious from you were just talking about your colleagues in the ceramics world being so accessible. What are you noticing has been a response in this moment from the artist community?
Yeah, so I feel like so I also want to say that I'm very new to Philly. I moved here 6 to 8 months ago. I moved in August, so I'm
Mm,
very, very new to Philly. Um, but I moved to Philly to teach at Temple University at the Tyler School of Art. I'm their artist in residence for a year, um,
cool.
which is, yeah, super exciting. But again, the tight knit ceramics community. I was in Seattle for 12 years prior to moving to Philly, um, and um, upon moving here, I already knew a lot of people in the clay community. So it was a pretty easy transition to just like get to know um, some of the scene. And I'm still learning, but I feel like the visual arts ceramics community to begin with was just so inviting. And I was able to just meet and have coffee dates and lunches when you could do that sort of thing. Um, so it was a very easy transition. And I feel like upon my arrival, it was just, I was able to share what I was doing and like the kind of work that I was making and learn about some of these people that I, again, had seen on social media, but hadn't talked to in person. So um, I felt like in person, people were so genuine, generous with their time and just like very giving.
Yeah, and so since then, now that we're staying at home, do you feel that same sense of community?
I do. I still feel it. I'm not. I wasn't one for a lot of social media presence. I enjoy it, but I wasn't very active, and I've become a lot more active because that's the way to be in touch with people. So all these live feeds that you can go and just kind of support um, the people that are able to have studios in their own home will do a demonstration of like their technique or just talk about some of the artwork that they live with. So trying to show up and see what they're presenting. And same for me, I had an show opening scheduled in Seattle for the beginning of this month that was postponed, but I was able to do a remote kind of virtual digital opening where I just talked about the process and the work and um, yeah, and a lot of my friends showed up just to kind of show their support, which is great.
Lovely. Yeah, I heard something about that event, and I'm sorry that it got postponed. Hopefully, it will come back around. Do you have before we started recording, you said you wanted to show a few pieces that are in process. Can you tell us about what the work is, where the inspiration came from, and let's see what you got.
Yeah, so I have, so I did mention that a little in process. I can kind of show a
Ooh,
couple things here. So these are all clay. They've been fired one time, so they're a little strong. You can kind of hear the strength of them. Um, but these I was able to kind of like take them away from my studio at the university and kind of sneak them to my home. I don't have a lot of access here in my apartment. It's very small for working with like a dirty heavy material, but
mm,
I'm able to paint and finish the work. So I tend to put a lot of ornamentation decoration on the surface. This is a luchador, a Mexican wrestler.
Mm.
And it's just a head because I'm making separate bodies that these heads could be interchangeable on.
Ooh.
So they'll kind of like rest on the base of the neck. Um, but so I have this. This is just kind of showing the ornamentation with just a lot of the.
It's so intricate.
There's a lot of decoration definitely that goes into it, and I use molds to create this ornamentation, so it can move relatively quick. But I'll grab the next one. I have everything kind of staged. But this is adding some of the color, and this is what I've been able to do here at home. And this will go back into a kiln and get refired again, and it'll kind of brighten up or deepen the color that's on the surface. But this is another one of the other figures with, just kind of not a luchador. This one's more based around Egyptian pharaohs and Chola style makeup, which I saw these correlations to. So.
You saw the correlations from what?
From like the Egyptian pharaoh kind of eye decoration to like Chola, which is this Chicana style makeup, typically around like southern Los Angeles. That was like very dark eyeliner, very dark eyebrows. So.
Can we pause for just 1 second? I'm realizing that we're also for two reasons: for accessibility purposes, but also we're recording this for the audio. Would you mind actually going back to the first piece and describing it a little bit? You did describe what the inspiration was, but could you actually describe the piece itself so that people can start to, I don't know, visualize?
Yeah, of course. So what I have here is just a head. It's about human sized, maybe a little bit smaller. And the head is it's very highly ornamented in this flower motif, but the eyes and the mouth and the nose are still accessible in the pattern of a Mexican wrestler, a luchador. So the entirety of the face is covered in this, I would say, embellished in flowers. And you can still see that, or you can still recognize it as a person wearing a mask, a wrestling mask.
George, it's really cool.
Thank you so much.
Cool. Oh, you're still describing. Sorry. Go ahead.
No, on the back of the head, there's just like reference to putting on the mask. So there's like a tie. I would say it's all made out of clay. None of it's movable, but it's supposed to signify like a fabric or a string tie on the back.
Cool. Thank you.
Yeah, of course.
Second piece that is colorful.
The second piece is started out the same as the other mask, just in regards to decoration. So I'll just talk a little bit about the process, but I make the basic shape of the head, and then I ornament with these flower motifs or different what are called sprigs of decoration. So these are embellishments that are added to the surface. So this second head is the same size, but it has it doesn't have the face fully covered. It's almost wearing like a hat or a cap in a way. So the face is still fully exposed. And I started to apply some of the color on the flower motifs in just kind of a varied pattern. And for this, I wanted to reference Egyptian culture because of with this head, I wanted it to kind of mimic, or I was thinking about pharaohs and just kind of like the monumentality of what pharaohs represented. So I used turquoise and kind of a goldish color to add onto the surface of these flowers, and then started to deepen and darken the eyes in this pharaoh-like elongated quality, which then made me think of cholas in like southern Los Angeles, southern California, which is this Chicana style of makeup that's very dark around the eyes, also dark eyebrows. So this is kind of a cross-cultural reference between, I don't know, a lot of my work has to do with blurring boundaries and how we, as people from all over the world, look at very similar imagery, even though we tend to categorize it separately.
Yeah, there's this, as you were talking, I was thinking two things, always two things. The first is that the ornamental cap, it was reminding me of not to be reductive in any way, so please forgive that. But like a bit like a woman, like a woman in the 50s bathing cap.
Mhm.
And the second thing is I was thinking about that intersectionality, and you described that there's so much that is clear across cultures. Is art can represent different aspects of culture, and that there's so much similarity across different cultures, but yet we sort of segment somehow. So I find that very interesting, that that's a sort of tenet for you.
Yeah, and for me, it started, I was really fortunate to receive a travel grant back in exactly 10 years now, in 2010, from my graduate studies at the University of Washington. So I received a travel grant. It was called the Bonderman Travel Fellowship, that took me almost around the world in the span of a year. And that's when I started to witness and see just, the common imagery that's present all around the world. And then it took me a few years coming back from that trip to finally like make those visual connections. But yeah, it just showed me, that the world is a small place, and we really are connected people.
Do you have another piece for us, or was that it? I'm sorry.
Those are the two
Okay,
pieces,
great.
and again, I have a other tangential piece,
Sure.
but again, I work in clay. I can't make these pieces in my apartment. Clay's dirty. I don't have the equipment to fire, so and I can't go to my studio because it's at a university and we just can't access. So while I'm here, and I will eventually finish painting those, hopefully relatively soon. But I've been working on a little rattle that I've been working on for a couple years now. So this is just out of wood, and I've just been whittling and trying to kind of shape these like figurative. And this is completely new to me. I'm not,
You're
this
not a
isn't what
whittler?
no, I'm not a whittler. uh, but it just kind of keeps me active and keeps me
Mm.
engaged in a way that I typically don't. But a nice little rattle in there. I've been working on this for like 3 years, so it's just I pick it up, play with it, put it back down, but it keeps my hands busy. So
Busy, yeah.
yeah.
There's so many things that I could ask that but what you just said about it keeps my hands busy. I picked it back up. It's something I've been working on for years. That's starting to become a running theme amongst the guests, actually, is that it's like there's somebody who says, I sort of stopped playing my guitar, and then, a year ago or so, I pulled it out, and now it's the thing that I'm doing to keep myself creative, to support uplifting myself. It's part of self-care.
Mhm.
Somebody else had said that they were always writing, but they never shared it, and now they have a blog. And this is my way of being creative and like working with my hands, so to speak. So I'm just curious, like, who we are as artists, who we are as human beings, is we've got to do something, right? And to me, I feel as though if we are able to, as artists, create in this moment when we are isolated and we're not able to connect in the ways that we normally would, and we're not able to finish those pieces to get them to a place where they're at an opening, right? What is it that we can do? What is it that we should be doing? How can policymakers or just the community activate artists in this moment, and beyond, in order for us to push through and beyond this particular crisis, do you think?
Yeah, that's a big question.
I know.
But I love what you said. I do feel like we are creatives, and we want to engage. We want to engage with ourselves, and then we want to engage with a community. And right now, for myself, I've been taken out of my routine, which is why I can pick up that piece of wood, that rattle, and like get back to whittling, because I'm out of my normal routine of going to my studio, working on the art that I typically work at. I'm also an educator, so teaching with a group of people in person. And I've kind of been taken away from that. So it's a perfect time to, the first week of self-isolation was just rest and trying to recover a little bit. But now that more time has passed, my body feels anxious to just create and make, and again, keep my hands busy. So I think that second, third, fourth week are the perfect times to just pick up those things. I've also been journaling a lot, which is something that I haven't done, that I've wanted to get back into, and learn Photoshop skills, which are great because I can just sit on my computer and practice those. But I would say that there's a lot of people creating some form of access, but it's all digital. So if you don't have access to a computer or the internet, reliable access to these things, it's hard to create and put your work out there. So I think as a policy, just people need to have access to these connecting tools that keep us connected to people, even though we aren't physically in the room with them. So, but I have seen a lot of creatives, a lot of artists just making things accessible online, which is so wonderful. I've never experienced that much creativity via the digital world.
Agreed. I think that we're gonna we're the kind of people that if we are in this moment and now we are sharing much more, I would say more positive things, and utilizing media, digital platforms like social media, for this, positivity, this creative energy flowing. I dare say that there's a way to sort of combat some of the negativity that happens in those spaces as well, to a certain extent. But the more we're doing this, I've talked about this before in many different ways through the podcast, on this video cast, that I anchor my core values in a speech that Bobby Kennedy made in the late 60s in South Africa, where he talks about the ripples of hope, and how when one man, he says man, but one person does something good, that creates one ripple of hope, which begets more ripples of hope, and inspires others to do, and that eventually there's this big wall that will, this big wave that will crash down any wall. And so that's been my mission, really. And I think that if you think of the trolls and the negativity on social media as the wall, that we can do some positivity. Look at John Krasinski's Some Good News, that. How awesome is that, right? Obviously, that this is an idea that I was inspired by. That I was inspired by a bunch of other things, but this is my take on that good news front. But I also have a vision in my head of how we could be dreaming and planning now. Now that we're 4 weeks in and have maybe dealt with that, we just need the rest, and some of us were sick, and now we're at a place where it's okay, we know that we're actually going to be in this is not as temporary as we had thought or hoped. And so what do we do during this time to stay active, not just physically, mentally safe, mentally healthy, but also finding ways to start to mobilize for good. I guess that's really what I'm asking. I hadn't used that word before, mobilize. Maybe that's really what I'm saying.
Yeah, I think that's, I think people are, I love the idea of positivity just kind of coming down on all the trolls, because I really haven't seen, and it's, I don't know if it's just the way that I'm searching or what's being offered to me, but everything is a lot more about connection and less about, putting people down and anonymity. People want to be connected, so it seems like they're putting their name to things and themselves. There's no more like the anonymity, which is what causes all this like trolling and weirdness.
Yeah.
But again, like some good news, John Krasinski's, I love it. It's just beautiful and positive, and with the mobilization, to see people just like the creativity of sewing masks, not like medical masks, but just masks for people to wear to like retain some sort of safety. That's beautiful. They're, need it, but also there's a creativity behind that. I have a student of mine who is embroidering these different types of flowers on these masks to kind of tie it back to plague masks and how they used to use flowers in order to mask the smell of. So it has a conceptual component to it, but they're just like these really beautiful forms. And I feel like a lot of people are conceptually and visually just like making all this content. So it's a sad time we live in, but it's also, for creativity, people have the space to be creative, which is great.
Yeah, agreed. Well, thank you so much for being a wonderful guest, and for sharing your beautiful work and for helping me see, visual art from a different perspective than I normally do as just a viewer, and an appreciator. That a word? I don't know.
I love it. Yeah, thank you. I had this was wonderful, and thanks for putting this out. It's amazing. Like it's great that this is accessible, and I'm looking forward to seeing some of the other guests that are on here.
Yeah, well, thank you. So thanks everyone for watching. If you haven't already, please subscribe to listen to the podcast episodes, which is a whole different set of content. And you can subscribe to SoundCloud or Apple Podcasts or wherever you listen to your podcasts. And always remember to keep making art.